Hello, American world is in a semi-ancient trap. Modern humanity's volume science as individual difference slash S, group difference slash S, in the species body's difference S slash S. We need not to read theories on relativity to discern how we have black pupils, whites of eyes, and different color eyes. Nature is just demonstrating we have the same and we have different color eyes. Nature is communicating about difference. We have exceptions in exception nature, different colored eyes. Nature showing us its distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous relationship to itself that we see also as the other species bodies with distinctly but also non-distinctly. For example, with black pupils and whites of eyes, a giraffe has male, female, other group differences in the species body difference as three volume sciences that are simultaneous, as we have as a species body. And then again, there is that continuity between the different species bodies, distinctly, non distinctly, and simultaneously. Also, relative to a further hyper simultaneous identity of simultaneous that is simultaneously greater than and more finite than all things individual grouped in together. And ancient religions, ancient languages were revealed to teach this. Before modern religions were needed to, to do damage control and try to direct people to overcome how sciences had really become criminally foreign influenced, how really it has been self-valued, treatments of history that can't defend themselves, and before it actually what led to sophistication. That is the finite, the grouped, and in the complete simultaneous actually as should be defended. Republic's value/value progression. What January 6th treatments are about, just like with the War of 1812, and all fronts on every modern nation's capitals, their national capitals. Everyone's leaving. The breaching method used in effectively itself is a method by measuring and maintaining what it caused, where and how what really forced those laws to be what they were. Here, through other natures of industries, bodies, through criminal enterprises, private ones, and the countries, modern countries. We know their foundations were involved with slavery strictly, distinctly against every single person. Now, this is obfuscated and worse, where and how our founders were, in fact, cheap miniature slaves, sickly, distinctly from everyone else. They were extorted and had to counter extort the other founders. So to discern our founders' identities and what they communicated with us, American history can't be told properly or understood unless you understand why and how they had to counter extort the other founders and hide their roles with what was posited, where we were told to get the Constitution unabridged and the value of Marbury versus Madison without criminal insidiousness natures of appearances of justice, for example, treatments. Now, there's someone with the name Fanon by CNN. CNN has sources, nothing personal against CNN. They did good reporting with statutes where they ignore certain roles with certain natures of organized crime. And where and how that that appears to be debatable. If it's organized crime with the motivation of the online, there are means to show hyper-evidentially, for example, leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context in Manhattan and in Washington and interstates, um, Connecticut interbranch and intercampuses, and names next to them already had roles. For example, filming fake exceptions, playing roles where others film fake exceptions mixed to the difference of that employee as actually employed. Journalist license, we're supposed because they're supposed to follow rules and not make things up. There were exceptions that were made relative to where and to how, since before founding parents Americas were even born. For example, George Washington and Marbury versus Madison. Just like modern religions, they knew that already the human fact-keeping nature was in defenses of itself as a certain type of victim slash hyper victim from semi-ancient uses of the names of the parts of the human species body, now as systems tactical ulterior from its own, individually grouped in together, where people speak about humanity as enemies, but they and speak together as unity and independence. Where the difference of that, because they're getting over on the simultaneous slash hyper simultaneous. Every word, every phrase, and every sentence is the phenomenon of where you could put, or every word has the phenomenon where you could put the word hyper before it, and nature after it. And nature is a distinct word for identity. Now, see, we have this obfuscated because we have not had properly explained or discerned with the interpretation of how the words, the definitions of the words, the significance we have not had appreciated properly with this. Simultaneously, the appreciation of the criminally foreign influenced uses of databases since before computers, also at other locations, and where and how that was is involved with uses of all locations, singularly, everywhere the species body is, by the method that while it was sustaining the real causes of negative value nature, progressions, acts, and natures like wrongdoers, right? Criminal insidiousness natures, criminal enterprises themselves, and the difference of private ones, overt criminal enterprises, and the branches of government and or the exceptions tied to them, not as a government, but technically as them. Like, for example, the prisons tied to them, the people associated with the databases and all capacities associated with it, even technical. How could that be? This is uses of location slash S. So the reason we're supposed to have, I mean, you're supposed to be a journalist and say you're a journalist. You're supposed to have a license. I'm not a licensed journalist, but they've been still using those licensed journalists to pretend others are lying, to lie about the motivations of others and of themselves, as their rules with all sides in civil and criminal cases, and with victims advocates at the same time with federal rules crimes, federal rules of evidences crimes, and uses of that also singularly used, and with all that caused and keeps and causes individually grouped in together, and all that right back to our location slash S relative to where and to how, for example, such simple revelations and on truths that can't be used for lies. I mean, truths not being used for lies when such, in other words, where and how the fact that we have black pupils and whites of eyes exactly the same, and we have exceptions, except for how we have different color eyes. We have it as exceptions and exception nature. This is a part with how we can discern the hyper invisible but still discernible. That comes with the invisible but still discernible. Parts of speech, for example, with each of the languages. With the value of why and how, we need different names for the verb at the same time. we are looking, but this is reason works relative to how functional it is, how the hyper invisible but still discernible is juxtaposed with the invisible but still discernible, as each subject is, with conjunction to all other subjects. As space is one order, but it is additionally 1/3/5 identities of order that are simultaneously positive to themselves, as itself, as that which is actually hyper simultaneously or not. So we could discern that a theory that leaves out a special difference also. For example, reportedly, the theory of relativity comes with a theory of special relativity. Nature communicates as relativity/hyper relativity. Again, how it is functional. There's a whole bunch of ways to see. In other words, that's invisible but still discernible. Where and how there is a species, there is a value, the invisible but still discernible. Value of the discernment of why and how there are species bodies too, distinctly, non-distinctly, and hyper simultaneously. Nature shows us what words. Nature shows us we have an extent of the possession of its complete identity, even where the smallest finite detail of itself exists, or anything that could be made up, has inseparable from the smallest part of that self, from the group parts of it, and from the whole thing. The conjunction that the simultaneous/hyper simultaneous has to itself. It is the only increasing value as what really happened before the smallest finite detail of this modern republic, as preserved, still not, having addressed uses of its self-value, with descriptions of it as descriptions of itself, criminally foreign influence. There are proofs in its nature, in the nature of denials of the significance of this. On the January 6th attack, leaving out how George Washington and our founders' plan involved the counter extortion. For example, at Wethersfield, Connecticut, right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War, of people involved, as everyone was forced to be involved, with and as slaves, fact cheaply nature-wide, sickly distinctly, and leaving out how sickly non-distinctly. For example, leaving out how a breaching method was involved with use of the sum of the laws that were individually grouped and together, criminally foreign influence and tactically delusions wrought. This is per nature's definition of criminally foreign influence. We know that nature will demonstrate negative value nature progressions, acts in natures. For example, if one is a system, even if everyone agrees, to entertain things like slavery, nature itself will demonstrate negative value nature progressions, acts in nature. Nature itself has the innocence and the weakness and the simultaneous strength that the adults don't have, but and kids, little kids, even the big bear has a little baby. Nature shows its system is going to cause positive value nature progressions, acts, or natures, or negative ones, and it shows us the difference between causing positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures that are criminal insidiousness natures of positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures. How it has stayed, where and how any grade could have one victim think to themselves, how come? How could something be natural? How could slavery have been if it wasn't natural? It was, so it must be natural. It is only natural as criminal insidiousness. I am not a lawyer. So the experts on the law, including ones with badges, they were child abused where and how. Other things were communicated for our founders at each age of fact, treating nature. And while that was going on, predicate acts with facts were being stuck into databases. And that was and is generating conjunction to where and to how people pretend passions and emotions with descriptions of their own motivations and of those of others, where instances are described and where and how actually they unfold. So actually honest science, let alone passions behind it, it would have come to the revelations. The suburbs were designed before our founders were born for torture method, extortions. Our founders were told us to address the communicated rather than said for us to communicate for us. They also communicated for us to address how what they said was moderated by a torture, extortions, and slavery method that all were also forced to deny. Otherwise, they would be sensed that individual nature of logic, that identity, that for that name, that association with location, with going against where, for example, where and how it employed before America was even before our founders were born, already having been sustained. Nature was demonstrating negative value nature regressions, acts of nature, all in demonstration of the breaching method. Effectively using nature's demonstrations of itself to to to, to maintain self-cultivated what it had propagated from semi-ancient times as a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise, which is more probably and more practically and demonstrably what the religion's multi-front, naming it the devil, Shaitan, and giving it different names, is a part with too, because they didn't have, modern religions already had the sciences, self-valued uses of the convictions relative to entertaining that as quality of fact, human nature, quality aspects of nature that could not defend itself and afford uses of short words with revelations were not as used as truths. For example, we have black pupils, whites of eyes that are the same color eyes. See, that has been used, and there are other identities of the law who need to pretend they are practical, need to pretend they are good, need to pretend they could speak about the good of others, need to value how kids and or adults will get caught for doing things bad that are way less bad than they do. Where and how predicate acts with facts methods were originally and still employed. Forgiveness is to get to see through to also to where and to how exceptions and exception nature. All programming treatments of what programming is about. It has been roles with an identity theft, fraud, slander method from off campuses. The intelligence community has been influencing campuses to roles, making opinions dishonestly and contributing additional behind the scenes information, not wanting to too. They're attaching everyone and everyone around them to fake and changed words. The interbranch, where and how they are being shown means to do this. Where and how since before our founders were born, the legal identities, all statutes and precedents, all names, roles with it were being used remotely. Not just then, knowing that we're going to have to, now their identities are involved. Further, as identities of the ground. Further means to increasingly keep others needing to hide the same quality aspects of fact keeping nature sabotaged at our location by the breaching method, keeping better than perfectly manifest other things others or selves blamed and not defended. And so that's where and how they are being used remotely. Oh, what do you think the January 6th was? They leave out criminal foreign influences involved with that spot, every location slash S. So hyperprogramming uses lists and arrays, uses reason the way nature does, in ways greater than and simultaneously more finite than. And with hyperconjunction, as the only hyperconjunction, as for example, a part of the hypersimultaneous, when how it is actually discernible. The value of truth before the order of the finite, the order of the finite, the order that is active, grouped in our control. The order that is in our control that we don't know the extent of it, but we know. Like when New York City was being built, when cities throughout the world were being built, evidence and hyper-evidential is where and how, since before America's founders were born, the suburbs were designed for torture, extortions, plural, and slavery, methods singular slash S, and is consciously, sickly, distinctly against everyone to use effectively to measure and maintain, where and how nature would demonstrate the increasing value of the discernment of how sickly now distinctly against everyone. And so, but the breaching method used that to employ fake identities of fake integrity. Styles, needs, and nature showing how to get away with it by pretending to perceive people attacking others, while staying nature's needs, offensively preventing that which came first and what is actually recorded from being discerned. Now one has learned. So in other words, WFSB faked conversations with me, and they told a whole bunch of different lies at the same time, with a proven principal child abuser to force that. New Britain Superior Court had rape threats with it and other passion crimes with their Facebook page, and with a Joshua Julian also involved with KKK, Confederate flag themed and black themed military police forms and medical families, involved also with foreign ones. And Saudis, they forced the roles with them, and forensics locations. Differentially, they forced each other. There's a whole bunch of different countries here and there where they speak for things about crimes. They're incapable of defending their identities of logic and of affording the integrity by what is capable of using the truths when not used as a criminal insidiousness, not used in conjunction with criminal insidiousness, natures of logic, and or identities of logic, and physical logic values. In other words, these are 3-volume sciences that are bound the same way. In other words, the value of Native Americans' rights distinctly from our own is because they were and are hurt by the human fact keeping nature breaching method sickly distinctly from every other natural difference. To keep descriptions of history, for example, in our faces, tactically delusions raw, tactically criminally foreign influence fact keeping nature quality aspects of nature associated with the qualities and natures of the debate and how that is gotten away with. Also, where and how ignored has been the proper ways to discern the intelligence and the wisdom of the kids of the city, for example, and of the suburbs, where and how they were employed and designed by the torture, extortion, slavery method again since before our founding parents were born. One of the ways they got and get away with this was by pretending, well, look, this is recorded. This is what they said our founders owned slaves. And they leave out what our founders communicated about the breaching method. They've been using the value of one of the ways you could, if someone has research or not, doesn't mean someone could have all the research in the world. If they're denying something that could be answered or revealed just by having black pupils, whites of eyes like everyone else, and exceptions in exception nature. Nature communicates other than that which is tactically delusions wrought and criminally foreign influence formally, because it has been maintained with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, with the kids of the families and with the adults at the same time with the interbranch ones and with the exceptions tied to them. Differentially, everyone not wanting to, but increasingly, better than perfectly, kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts tied illusions, finite ones, grouped ones, progressive values. Like what was the value of New York City? They knew it was employed by a breaching method. What would it would only be allowed to be manifest as, and in response to what really was the causes of the negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, like murderers, like kids or adults with criminal enterprises. See, the interbranch employed originally and still forced to be self-value uses syntactically of criminal insidiousness, natures of positive treatments, negative treatments simultaneously as collusions against the human identity's value/value progression system. So now we are countries A through Z, uses of our names by the formal debaters with the suits and ties, with the counters, with the exceptions to that. Collusions increasingly when they speak. They get away with this by changing what people say, preventing them short words, and by changing, in other words, forcing people to be described by others. And as people rolls with the interbranch for replacing what's actually recorded online and totally fabricating evidences too. As Connecticut's intercities interbranch rolls with Weathersfield, for example, also intercampuses of each age and nature. The intelligence community records, confesses, and is demonstrating their roles with fire departments, with other countries like Russia, and their roles with medical campuses, with emergency rooms, with mental health experts and people supposed to be experts on drugs and medicines to have roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. Tactically delusions wrought, criminally foreign influence, factory miniature quality aspects of nature, wire crime, mail crime methods, identity theft, fraud, slander roles, because they've been five, then they need to hide fake conversations with people at other locations. Oh, it's against the law to pretend I had a conversation with people that were my patient. I wasn't even their patient. In other words, I never even had a conversation with the Leahy family. They put all these fake quotations and sentences they pretended I had with them and with others when I was forced there for 3 days one time. Then they said that they did that through the mail. So I found out their names. In other words, one of the ones with the name Brendan Leahy, but a thing down. I never had a word of him, a conversation with my life. Not that either. That was after I already observed a whole bunch of people tied to the Dillon family and to other houses near me with an Anna Dillon, a Kevin Dillon, a Thomas Dillon, further involved with a proven principal child abuser. I caught them with him and with others before that. They forced it hid by changing the media and pretend communications with me and him, which was over the phone. He left a whole bunch of messages over an answering machine phone and on an old fashioned phone too. No, and they put fake emails with whiting forensics and state police associated with them, military associated with them, people associated with databases, and medical associated with them. When I was a kid and now as an adult, they were involved with various natures of organized crime bodies and various natures of federal criminals before they got caught, and since to force them to hide things. They're covering up live regressions. They have a former Mayor Gold and his family. Increasingly, people tied to my grammar school I had nothing to do with at all, and ones that have tried to make fake exceptions timed with their parents. Increasingly, people that were in my sixth grade class too were involved with confessions. In other words, in demonstrations from other people. In other words, they're putting whole faked. We wouldn't even have communications, making all exceptions were them planting evidences, and they don't even realize that they're the kids. They're forcing people to use others' names, including with the news. They have the teachers of the kids. Some of them are involved with that. A whole bunch of some kids when I was a kid recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There's people tied to a Lance Cuddy, and as a Lance Cuddy, involved with a tiki bar place and Alina's Pizza on Park Street in Hartford, and people involved with the former mayor, director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, involved with child offenders, including sexual and medical at the same time, and interbranch Hartford courts families and their intimate ties, involved with foreign and domestic military, also with medical corruption, tactical delusions, criminally foreign influence, fact, truth, nature, quality, aspects of nature, uses of where and how they have agreements to speak about things like crimes. Again, tactically delusions raw, criminally foreign influence, fact, truth, nature, quality, aspect, nature, self-value, uses of where and how the sciences where manifest are used that way, individually grouped and together, consciously where and how victims slash hyper victims are self-valued roles as victim predators slash hyper predators, as collusion with other natures of organized crime and cases, not just all sides of criminal and civil cases, victims advocates, and interbranch names, timed roles with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and conscious uses of ducking behind pretended legitimate sense and sensibility, and uses of, quote, the right to rely, unquote, like where and how they have hundreds of countries shared on and off the campuses, and with the names next to them so long, because that's how long it's been manifest, where there has been no integrity of sciences, and that was what our founders left us to demonstrate. And where the opposite is simultaneous, is that simultaneous is being only allowed to, there's quality of fact nature being maintained offensively that are worse than phishing, planting evidences, role, covering up styles doing that. They're supposed to afford president, let alone they're do worse. They don't afford people the right to remain innocent for the reasons that our founders needed such to be gotten the rest of the way freed by ourselves. Rules with the Patriot Act. I'm not even a lawyer. They're recorded self-value, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw. Knowingly they had roles with torture methods and extortion methods and tactical delusions before the World Trade Center attack, as ones in that context and since, including as victims involved with the predicate act since, also World Trade Center themed, where and how WFSB, WTNH, and Fox Connecticut News, also with names next to their locations, have roles. See, these are judges' families. The Wethersfield police brought up the name, and other people brought up. See, they have people with the name Della Fera and Scalora that a Cololo family and others recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. These are families with probate judges involved with drugs and medicines crimes and sexual crimes with little kids, where and how they have roles with identity thefts and frauds, and uses of off-campuses locations, where and how intercampuses the intelligence community have roles. For example, with Russians, with fire department families, and with Hartford Hospital, and with the families of businesses next to there, and as ones involved with Rocky Hill, like Demorals Market, and all along Elm Street and Rocky Hill and Weathersfield, people involved with wire crimes in Weathersfield police that are timed roles with state police and FBI and other agencies and their families, and their forced roles of Saudis. And the opposite too, differentially, the difference between that as roles with as the names like Scalora, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with police with predicate acts on my street, with child sex offenders, switching and forging names of police chief Cintron, his extended family, and his daughter, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with a whole bunch of people with the Mayan families too with this. So let's get the interbranch onto paper, one name and sequence, fix the news, fake conversations with me and others, and get them on paper. Respond for the principal child abuser's campus. Confessions. These are also sexual groups, and one's countering them to have collusions because then they pretend to hate and things like that. They have prosecutors and retired and standing, all identities of law. They, in other words, we have hyper evidential to show the answers. Forgiveness is not to give up where and how everyone's guilty of at once of so many things. They also recorded have roles with foreign nations using crime methods where they pretend, oh, this person says everyone's evil. And some of them fake conversations with doing that. And then they prevent, the others, they're lying when they mention that and then pretending that's doing that because they have mental diagnosis. That's one of the diagnoses. They have criminally foreign influence uses of mental health care and people involved with the Hague, for example, with all sides with treatments of World War I and World War II, as roles leaving out phrases like criminal insidious, like criminal foreign influences and criminal insidiousness, and they're leaving out proper uses of them with the world with the Washington. Michael Fanon uses swears because of his roles with applications by where and how assigned other things, others ourselves blamed for things like slavery, where and how real wisdom and smartness, smart kids, honest kids are they're gonna use correlation by where and how sickly distinctly Native Americans were prevented rights, and you, as a normally human being, are actually honest and free. You're gonna value means to discern the breaching method that hurt them the way they no one wants, that hurt the black white thing, playing games with that way you want no one wants that. We are a hyper native system prevented. So everyone is manifest, blaming other things other than themselves. Where and how too. The breaching method is the answer. Discern all the ways it is the answer. What caused slavery? The breaching method. Discern how other things are pretended would caused it, like our founders. They communicated for us to, and the mental health care experts are pretending people have delusions if they go against what's written in a book. The value of what is written in research. They have the research locations involved, recorded criminally foreign influence with the names on off election locations. So we have to have mandated law followed. They prevent people short words, interbranch switch names. Make sure they follow those words and get on paper because these are ones also with the name Ray Cololo and YouTube comments and others involved with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and with co-defendants of his involved with all sides in criminal and civil cases, victims and their advocates with predicate acts with facts and with sticking fake things in databases and criminally foreign influence conversations with their teachers and with people involved at Central Connecticut State University and Trinity College through time involved with predicate acts with kids on my street and with elderly homes with the ones involved. Fear God, make sure they get on paper and stop making me beg for a response. Don't pretend they don't understand me. They don't know what get on paper means. So make sure. Have them say sorry to the federal judge.